Welcome to another edition of Carnivore Bites. I'm your host, Jeff Sherman, along with Dr. Eric Lopkin. Hot off the press, Hunter, in a very defiant and in a speech that really geared towards creating a lot of sympathy for him, even though he bailed on child support and spent like on 100 grand on porn, basically defies the subpoena, the congressional subpoena, and has a little, let's say, impromptu press conference in front of Congress. Your thoughts?
Yeah,
And
this
basically claims that his father has nothing to do with it, do nothing of his business deals, and blah 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 blah
all
blah
right.
blah.
Well,
Your thoughts?
no, we I got to push back on that because that's not what Hunter said. He did not say that his father had nothing to do or no knowledge of his business. He said his father did not participate financially in his business. Okay. That indicates that he did participate in other ways. So he's just opened up a can of worms for his father because essentially what Hunter Biden is being accused of is selling access to his father. Now, by saying his father did not participate financially does not mean that he wasn't selling access to his father. So I believe he just gave the go ahead for the impeachment vote to further the impeachment investigation that is scheduled to occur later today. I think he just gave that new fuel. There were questions about whether it could pass or not.
Do you think
I
it's
th-
going to pass?
I think Hunter might have just given them what they need to get over the finish line. I mean, it's going to be close either
Well,
way. And
he did say his father was not involved in his business. He
well,
did
no,
say that.
again, he said he was not involved financially in his
Okay.
business. That
Well, isn't
the
that kind of a parsing words? If you're not involved in financially, you're not involved.
well, no, that's the key there. You can be involved in a business, in this case, the selling of Joe Biden's influence without being financially involved. If Hunter is making his money by selling access to his father, and his father is meeting with the business partners, which has been proven, he's getting on the phone with these folks, then he is involved in the business, but maybe he's not getting paid directly. And we already know that there's all these shell companies where the money is being funneled through. So the
Okay, but didn't he say in the debates that he had knew nothing about his son's
yes,
business dealings? That's
in
lie, liar, liar. Pants are on fire, aren't they?
exactly in the debates, he said
There
he
you
knew
go.
nothing about the business. He never talked to his son about the business. All of that has been disproven by testimony from both Hunter and his business partner. Remember, at one point, Joe Biden had claimed that Hunter never received payments from China. Well, even in today's statement, Hunter has admitted that he got payments from China.
Where does this? Okay, very good. I got to ask you one question before you get into your political analysis. What do you think of the whole objective, which is to create a sympathetic and empathetic delivery that is Hunter doing that to get sympathy for his ordeal, given the fact that he's what refused to pay child support and racked up, I don't even know how you do that, like $100,000 in porn, whatever. Who knows? The list goes on. But do you think that's going to be effective? Let's talk about the emotional part first. I think it's going to fall flat
I
on its
I
face
don't I don't
unless
think
you're a moron.
Now, I don't think there's anybody that has any sympathy left for Hunter Biden. Yes, he became addicted to drugs. Guess what? A lot of other people have too, without cheating on their taxes, without selling influence to a famous relative. Without denying his paternity. So the
It's even bigger than that because he chose porn, drugs. Forget about that. Okay, let's see. After his addiction, he still chose porn over his own kid. Not exactly what would they say is a mensch.
No, he's definitely not a mensch. But I think what's important to remember is the fact that, yes, the porn, the tax evasion, all of this happened after he allegedly recovered. So he can't use his addiction as an excuse. So, no, I don't think that he's going to garner any sympathy. And honestly, I think he's still being protected by the Justice Department because new indictments were filed just last week in California for tax evasion. He has the charge for the gun charge in Delaware. Here's the thing though, because of those new indictments, Hunter Biden, well, didn't show up for his deposition today, but he could have shown up and simply said, anything I say can be used in those court cases, so I'm pleading the fifth. I'm not saying anything. He could have completely stonewalled because of those indictments. Now, there was no reason to file the indictments before the deposition. They could have been filed after. So I think that the Justice Department and the special counsel are still trying to protect Joe Biden from what Hunter could say.
I would agree with that 100%. Um, Here's what I also think. I think for the ill-informed, I think it just brings attention to Hunter Biden, and even the people that maybe aren't the brightest bulb in the Christmas tree are thinking, wait a second, I thought he had no business dealings. What's going on? I think it's, again, not going to help Uncle Joe, and he needs a lot of help because do you know what his poll numbers are now? Aggregate
I believe they're
36%.
36. Yes.
There you go, 36. That's basically a lot of people's waistline,
Well,
but it's not what you want in a poll.
no, it's not. The Biden campaign knows they're in big trouble because
Huge trouble.
they have reached out as a surrogate to Hillary Clinton to campaign on his behalf. Now, first of all, his big problem, if you take a look at the demographics and the poll results, his big problem is with younger voters. Younger voters hate Hillary Clinton.
Who
Also,
doesn't?
he's having a big problem now with the left wing Muslim wing and the pro Hamas wing. Well, guess what? Hillary Clinton has been the most pro Israel Democrat out there. So it's not going to help him with that demographic either. So they're really grasping at straws trying to get their message across, which is just not resonating with the American people.
Yeah, I think there's really going to be. I think that 36 might be actually a high watermark. You look at things like mortgage rates. I mean, I don't. I unfortunately it escapes me. They were on average like before Biden. Everything's going to be like BC before Christ. It's going to be BB before Biden. I'm coining that one, by the way. And so the average mortgage was like $1,700. It's like over like like way over that now. People can't afford it, and then basically the a lot of economic experts are now predicting, the Economic Roundtable is now predicting at least a 50% chance of a recession. So all things, you got Hamas, you got the world on fire, you got the whole thing. I think it could be a high water mark. What do you think?
It is a high water mark. He does not seem to
I mean, going
understand.
into the future,
Yes.
do you think this could be his high watermark? I really do believe it is. And let me just interject one little thing with the press conference with the the Ukrainian the leadership. He just looked like a deer in the headlights.
Yeah,
I mean, he was like he, out to lunch.
his press conference did not go well, and quite frankly, there was a point in the press conference where you could actually see him start to falter, where he'd given it his all and now there was nothing left. There was no gas in the tank and he was unable to function properly. Now, I think 36% could end up being a high watermark because the Biden campaign does not seem to understand that this is not the same campaign as 2020. In 2020, it was all about Trump. Biden essentially ran as an alternative to Trump.
A
And
moderate
as
alternative.
right, and as he as you know, not as the non-incumbent, he could promise the world and not have his own policies come back to bite him. Now he doesn't have that. Even Democrats are starting to say, you know what? We can't stand Trump, but we were better off under his policies. So those policies are going to be a big problem for him. It's no longer, oh, we have to stop Trump. It's, well, we don't like Trump, but Biden's policies have screwed us over. In the most recent polls, he is completely underwater with, I believe it was 65% saying that they have been hurt by Biden's policies, as opposed to, I believe it was 53% saying they benefited from Trump's policies. And that's
And then there's
going to
something
make
else
the
you brought up.
difference.
There's also something else you brought up. The press conference, yesterday's press conference, you say that when he ran out of gas, he's not capable, okay, of actually engage, because the whole basement thing, but that's 3 years ago. Was he disabled then? Yes. But now he's exponentially worse. He is incapable of having a sustained campaign. It's
Yeah,
impossible.
yeah, his condition is
Impossible.
yeah, his condition is very clearly getting worse. And in fact, there was a clip that started airing from a 60 Minutes interview that he had done a while back, where Scott Pelley asked him about these people saying he wasn't capable of doing the job, and his answer was, "Just watch me." Well, we've been watching, and we've seen him deteriorate, and I think he stands in a very stark contrast to John Fetterman, because Fetterman, when he won, was completely incapable of doing the job, but he was recovering from the stroke. Now we have seen him gain capability, because as he's getting further from the stroke, he's recovering more. Biden's condition is not going away, and given their denial of it, there's a good chance he's not even getting any treatment for it. So he is just going to continue to deteriorate.
I would agree with that. And also, let's talk about the potential campaign, because we're not 100% sure he's going to be part of it. But let's assume he is. Yeah, you can do the teleprompter, but also it's a campaign. You have to do town hall meetings. You have to do meet and greets. He is incapable. He's pretty much 70% incapable of teleprompter, and he's 90% incapable of any kind of real time interaction. Your thoughts, Dr. Lopkin?
Yeah, remember, we already knew that on an average day, he only schedules events between 10 and 4. He does not do things later in the evening because he's starting to sunset. He does not do things early in the morning. You can't do that with a presidential campaign. You've got right now the Republican candidates in Iowa, and they've got schedules that are keeping them on the go from 6 o'clock in the morning to midnight just to make all of their appearances. And they are running around. He can't do that. And the fact of the matter is, he has a reprieve because the DNC has not allowed a real primary. So he doesn't have to do this until after the convention. But when the campaign heats up, he's going to have to be on the road, and he is not capable. And again, he's been focusing on keeping everything between 10 and 4. Last night's press conference with Zelensky started at about 10 after 5. by 2025 after 5, we already saw him faltering.
What do you mean by faltering? Just to be clear with our listeners.
What I mean by faltering is he was no longer able to choose his words well. He struggled to find them. You could hear his speech starting to slur a bit. You saw him physically deteriorate. His energy was sapped. Now
Troubling to say the least.
I'm sure there's medical definitions for all of that, but I'm not a doctor. I can just say what I saw, and it's not good. I mean, I've dealt with family members with dementia, with other mental faculty issues, and I hate to say it, but it doesn't get better at this point.
Well, I blame the people that were in charge 3 years ago, 4 years ago. His wife, family, the DNC, they knew this guy was not ready for prime time, but they put power ahead of the country. And that really is the headline for what is really going on. And speaking of headlines, Penn just, we have the three stooges. One of them has dropped out because they were threatening to pull $100 million worth of donations from University of Pennsylvania. Why do I bring this up again? Because I've been around the block, but I'm really shocked. I got to say this, shocked about where we are right now. You have the Ivy League, MIT, the leader, the president of MIT. She was not talking about excellence, none of this inclusion and all this kind of bullshit, right? And then I have to say, what's her name? Gay, Dr. Gay from Harvard. Yikes. I mean,
Yeah,
what have we become?
this
Yikes. She's not ready to be president of a community college.
Now, this is what happens when you let DEI initiatives run rampant, because Claudine Gay is very obviously a DEI appointee as president of Harvard. We know this not even from her testimony in front of Congress, and the fact that the Harvard board actually supported her unanimously because she is the first Black president of Harvard. But the fact that it is now coming out that she is guilty of plagiarism in her doctoral thesis. Now, that right there is a violation of Harvard's rules. If someone is caught doing this, they are expelled, but they're more than willing to keep you on the payroll if you meet their DEI criteria. And let's face it, let's take a look at Harvard's recent hire. You have Lori Lightfoot, who destroyed the city of Chicago, but Harvard decided she was capable of teaching. What she's teaching, I don't know. Maybe she's teaching failure. You have uh, Brian Stelzer
Brian Stelter, yeah,
from
yes.
CNN, who was fired from CNN because he was absolutely incompetent in his position, to the point that the ratings were going through the basement, and yet Harvard hired him. So they're
Okay, hold on, when you get fired from CNN, that's like getting thrown out of the Rolling Stones in their heyday for being a drug addict.
Yeah,
I mean, you got to really try to get fired from CNN.
Yeah, it is absolutely ridiculous. So Harvard has shown they don't care about the quality of education. They don't care about graduating the best and the brightest. They have their DEI socialist agenda, and that is what they're pushing. And we
And
have
guess what,
seen,
though? In the end, we already talked about the the slide in credibility and relevancy for college in general. But I really do believe that this is not just for effect. I think they've maybe forever or for the foreseeable future tarnished the Ivy League reputation. I really do believe this.
They
I
certainly
think a
have.
lot of if I wait, hold on, real quick, is I really believe that if I was in charge, and I'm sure there's others, CEO of a company, I'm really looking for good school applicants, but I'm kind of shying away from the Ivy League. Am I crazy? Tell me if I'm crazy.
No, you're absolutely right. In fact, a number of corporations have stopped recruiting at Ivy League universities because of what they're teaching. Um, we've talked about this before, but some companies have gone even further, saying they're not going to require a college degree. It's not needed. They can teach you the skills you need. We want to see go getters. But we also saw it's not just tarnishing the Ivy League and higher education in general. It is also starting to affect K through 12, and more importantly, the teachers themselves. A recent survey done in Chicago found that the majority of Chicago residents do not trust the Chicago Teachers Union to be doing what's best for their students. And this is a new survey that just came out. They do this every few years, and it is the first time that Chicago residents have said they don't have confidence in in the teachers union to protect their kids. And this is considered a bellwether. They fully expect to see the same results repeated nationwide. So you're seeing the general public say, our school systems are completely screwed up.
Well, I think there's more than just DEI at foot with that. But in getting back to the higher education, uh, do you know that like 30 cents on every dollar, and I'm really not exaggerating, it's certainly very close to that, if not more than that, it's on the university, at university level, I'm talking about tuition, is spent on DEI initiatives, the
Well,
infrastructure, the personnel. That is
colleges
true, you know that?
colleges have for a long time spent on useless programs, sprucing up their gyms for the athletic teams, and not paying attention to what their students actually need to be learning. And, I'm glad this is finally coming out. I'm glad to see people, speaking out against it. And I'm really glad to see donors starting to say, you know what, we're not giving you any more money. I mean, Harvard and
Well, they
Yale
shouldn't.
together.
They're failing at
Yeah.
their mission.
I
I
mean,
mean, even Alan Dershowitz, a Harvard grad and I think one-time professor at Harvard, basically is calling for the president to be fired and getting rid of that initiative, the DEI initiative. I think it's going to be a outcry because if you're paying for an education, it's not cheap anymore, and you're thinking, what the hell is? If you're the average Joe and Jane, forget about your kids going to Harvard, and you're looking at that's college, that's the best of the best. What the hell's happening at my university? The ramifications are profound.
Exactly. And you do have to look at how these universities are spending their money. And it's not, for years, colleges have cried poverty. Oh, we have to raise tuitions because we need more money. Harvard and Yale, just by themselves, have endowments that are almost large enough to pay off the national debt. So there's no excuse for crying poverty. But it's not even just the Ivy League. Colleges are wasting money. This is not an exaggeration. This is an actual case at UConn, University of Connecticut, a state run school. There is one professor who is being paid six figures to teach one class. Okay, teaching one class is a part time job. And
Yeah, it's
they
an
are
adjunct's job.
Right. And they are getting six figures from a state run school. Maybe it's time we start looking at how these colleges are spending their money before we enroll our students, before we enroll our kids, and certainly before we trust our kids' futures to these backwards institutions that have completely failed them.
I would agree with that, and also getting to the point of even at public universities, a public university that I have some knowledge about. We'll say that enrollments are declining. What are they doing? Are they cutting back? No, they're building more and more buildings. That makes a lot of sense, doesn't it? Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah,
well,
declining
again,
enrollments. Let's build some more buildings. There you go.
that that
Genius.
go- that goes back to what I said about colleges wasting their money. They seem to think a bigger campus, a better building is going to attract better students. Well, no. What's going to attract better students is the idea that what you are teaching them is going to make them a better person, that's going to get them a better job, that's going to provide them with an income that they can pay off these ridiculous student loans that they're taking and
Well,
still.
whoa. That's part of the problem, though. Student loans, okay? If that was not part of the equation, then colleges would have to. They'd be much more diligent about controlling their costs. But when you have a basically open season, there's no downward pressure or forces until recently about controlling costs. That's one of the problems. Not the only problem, but certainly a
No,
problem.
that is a major problem. Again, I run my own business. If I ran my business the way they're running some of these colleges, I'd have shut my doors years ago. These folks are being held up by these massive endowments and by an image of we're the best and the brightest that now it's coming to light hasn't been true for decades.
That is the quintessential point. Yes, yes, yes. The emperor has no clothes. It was all Harvard, Schmarvard, Cornell, blah, blah. And then all of a sudden, whoa, these people are really freaking stupid. I'm sorry. The Three Musketeers were about as dumb as you can effing get. Are you kidding me? That was shocking to me. I didn't really give a shit because I thought it was funny. But whoa, Dr. Gay,
Well,
the plagiarist, she had about as much ability as I wouldn't let her change my oil. There you go.
yeah, I mean, you're referring to them as the Three Musketeers. I prefer to refer to them as the Three Stooges. But
Much better, thank you.
they also gave a good indication of how inbred and incestuous higher education has become. Because the statements that all three of the university presidents gave at this testimony was provided by the same law firm.
Well, that
And
law firm, where'd they get their degrees from? Harvard? Just kidding. They were pretty shitty. They don't have no idea what the hell they're doing. Yes, go ahead.
They probably did get their lawyers from from Harvard Law, from UPenn Law, but you're seeing the universities created the lawyers. The lawyers then provided the services to all these universities so that they can justify how they trained those lawyers. It is an ongoing cycle that has to be broken.
One cycle that certainly needs to be broken is the cycle of Mr. Self-Hating Jew, and that's Bernie Sanders. Basically, was on the morning show. I think it was CBS News, Good Morning, whatever the heck it's called, and basically was saying that any money funneled to Israel and Netanyahu is irresponsible. Thank you, Bernie. What a great guy.
Yeah, I'm starting to wonder. We've said in the past that Bernie was an example of the fact that it isn't Biden's age that was the problem. It was his mental faculties, because Bernie, as much as we disagree with him, does have his mental faculties. I'm starting to wonder about that, because he made those statements shortly after making the statements that said you cannot have a ceasefire with Hamas, He actually called for Israel to remove Hamas, and then he went 180 in the other direction, and he keeps flip-flopping on this. So I'm not even sure if he's aware anymore of what he's saying.
Well, I'm going to go trump you on that one, no pun intended. I think he's always been an opportunistic piece of shit. He has no
Oh,
convictions,
well,
either
yes.
religious, ethnic. Yeah, so it's wherever the wind's blowing. That's what I really believe.
And that's more than likely, because it is, especially among the Democrats, an ongoing problem, because they have promised, Biden has promised to back Israel to the end, and then he goes, well, but we're talking to them about pulling back a little bit. Biden warned them about, um, if it goes on too long, public opinion will turn against them, because the Democrats are terrified by these Muslim groups who have organized to keep Biden out of office. And the senators, Congress people who are up for reelection next year are all starting to worry, if they stand up for what's right, are they going to be able to stay in office? So they're hedging between doing what's right and doing what's politically expedient. And I was
Yeah,
actually
but it's also a
amazed.
bigger issue because the Democratic Party, I'm sorry, I have to disagree with you. This goes back for a while about the so-called moderate Democrat. Yeah, that's like a 2023 dinosaur. Guess what? It's not around. Okay, the real Democratic Party is a radical party that's pretty much not quasi-socialist, but socialist, anti-Israeli, and not too far from the anti-Semitic realm of things. So to play in that playpen, that's what you got to be.
And that's part of the problem. I'm going to disagree with you that there are no moderate Democrats.
I Yeah,
I
there would
know a
they
number
to
of moderate
associate with that
Democrats. Yeah.
to associate with that party, you need to associate with what they're doing, and I think the room for moderation, I'm not a big believer in. Thank you very much.
Well, but that's the problem, is that there are moderates, but the Democrats accused the Republicans of letting the MAGA minority be the tail that wags the dog. Well, the socialist minority is the tail that is wagging the Democratic Party. They have kowtowed to this very vocal minority, and they
The
need to
tail's
start.
getting bigger, by the way.
I don't know that the tail is getting
I
bigger.
it
They're
is.
getting louder, but they're not getting bigger. And that's the problem. And I mean, if you think about it, this is what Ronald Reagan did with the Republicans back in 1980. He got all of what he called the silent majority to come together and stand up against the radicals, and which I find hysterical, because now, if you take a look at Reagan's policies, he'd be thrown out by the conservatives in the Republican Party now as not being conservative enough. Same thing with the Democrats with John F. Kennedy. He would be thrown out of the party for not being liberal enough. We need to get back to a point where the silent majority stops being silent and tells the radicals in both parties to sit down, shut up, and do what you're told.
I would agree with that, but if I had to really pass judgment on it, yes, there's nutcases in each party, but the Democratic Party right now is a funhouse, meaning an insane asylum.
It is,
There's no
but
anchors in that party. Yeah,
but
there's
but to be
nutcases. I get it, Gates and the other, but it's not even close. So there's no moral
but to
or no
be
equivalency on that one.
well, no, there is an equivalency, just not right now. Because if you look at what went on in the Republican Party with the Tea Party, you saw something very similar. This is something that happens time after time. You actually did see this in the 80s and 70s with the Democratic Party, which is why the DNC instituted super delegates and why they lost in the Reagan and Bush years, because they were trying to pull the party back. Now it's gone back to the wacko fringe. This happens, it's a pendulum. It has happened before. It will happen again in both parties. The problem is it goes so far, the Republicans to the right, the Democrats to the left, that when the pendulum swings back, it swings too far in the other direction. And we keep seeing that. That's actually why we need folks like No Labels and like third party runs, like potentially Joe Manchin, like Robert Kennedy Jr., to keep these two parties in check and remind them that the wackos that are coming out for the primaries are not the majority of Americans.
I would agree. And on that note, if RFK is at 22% now, and at that level he needs to appear on the debates, I think that will destroy Biden because you're not just going up against Trump, but you're going up against a Democrat that's eviscerating you. I'd love to see that happen. We talked about Bernie, the Jew hater, but we have someone, Dr. Phil, who's not Jewish, and he actually had access and looked at the raw footage of the atrocities of October 7th. And he, unlike Bernie, said he's forever changed. And he also called the Ivy League a woke hotbed of bigotry. I like Dr. Phil now. I never used to like him, but I think he's no, his
Yeah,
show is ridiculous. I get that, but no, at least he has the ho-hos to voice an opinion, unlike some of the others, especially in the Democratic Party, who are of the Jewish faith. That they go on these once in a while, but need to say a lot more than what they're saying. Thank you, Dr. Phil.
yeah, you are seeing, unfortunately, at way too slow a rate, you are seeing people, especially in Hollywood, start going, oh, wait a minute, where their knee jerk reaction was these incredibly anti Semitic statements. You do have people like Gal Gadot. And for any of our listeners who may not know who she is, she played Wonder Woman in the Justice League and Batman v Superman movies. But Gal Gadot is an Israeli actress who served in the Israeli Defense Forces, and she has been hosting public showings of this footage. That's probably where Dr. Phil saw them. And the more people that see the actual footage, the more the facts actually get out. That is what is starting to change people's minds. I have actually seen footage taken at these Palestinian rallies where the protesters are actually asked what they know about the Middle East. They were asked pointed questions, and they had no idea why they were even there. All they know is, oh, Palestinians are claiming to be oppressed. We have to defend them.
And actually, it sounds flippant, but it's actually true. And that goes back to, again, we talk about this Ivy League, higher education. They were supposed to be, let's just say, dialectic introspection, meaning having to be able to investigate and to research a topic. That's kind of gone, isn't it? Because these idiots are out there. They know shit about the Palestinian issue. You could say you could make up a country. How does this sound as an experiment? Make up and oppress people, the Ulalites, right? And they're from Ulanda, and just make up a story. And they would go out there and probably, I'm sure they would protest. And you ask them, where is Lulanda? I don't know, but they're oppressed. Am I wrong?
No, you're not wrong. And in fact, not with history, but this was actually proven years ago by, of all people, Penn and Teller. Penn and Teller went outside of organic food markets and farmers markets and environmental rallies, and they sent people to get folks to sign a petition against it was hydrodioxide.
Yeah, it's water.
Right. But of course, the environmentalists didn't know that, and when they were told what it was, they said hydrodioxide is a very powerful solvent, which water is,
True.
and it is in every plant. It is in our food supply, which it is, and they got hundreds of people to completely ignorantly sign these petitions. At the Palestinian rallies, you're actually seeing folks admit to the fact, when asked the direct question, that not only don't they know where Palestine is, they've never seen a map of the Middle East. You could
Aren't they
tell.
being taught history at Ivy League? Wait, isn't history a
Apparently
part of the
not.
Ivy League curriculum?
Apparently
Jeez,
not. You could
wow.
you could tell these people that it is located between Narnia and Middle Earth, and they couldn't fight that that idea.
No, they'd probably say, yeah, of course. Speaking of people with no clue, the UN just passed a ceasefire resolution. Talk about a useless piece of shit, anti-Semitic, anti-capitalist organization. When do we turn those into condos and just get the F out of there?
Yeah, it really is time for the United States to say enough is enough. They did veto
Goodbye.
the US, when this came up in the Security Council, did veto it, but they were the only one to vote no. Even the United Kingdom, who is who their leaders are allegedly pro-Israel, abstained from voting. Every other member of the United Nations Security Council voted for this ceasefire. Fortunately, we have veto power. But this is something that has been going on for years. And under the Trump administration, we stopped funding a number of UN programs. And Biden,
Good.
when he took office, reinstated that funding, and it is really time that
Of
we
course he
pull that
did.
yeah, it is time we pull that funding back. They are anti-Semites, they are anti-Israel, they are anti-capitalism. When the Human Rights Committee for the UN is chaired by Iran, this is an organization that has gone seriously off the rails, and it is time that we stopped supporting them.
Yes, that's like your gym instructor being Keith Richards. It's time to go to a new gym. There you go. You like that one, Lopkin?
Yeah, that's a good one.
Thank you. Well, speaking of doing things well, I think we've been doing things well over a fair amount of time. I mean, our viewership, our listenership is increasing, correct, Dr. Lopkin?
Our listenership keeps increasing, as do the platforms that host us. We are available just about everywhere where you find podcasts. And of course, you can listen to every episode of Carnivore Bites at xvadio.com/podcasts, as well as the Carnivore Radio website, the Apple Podcasts app, which includes the brand new Xvadio Network channel. So you can find us there. Of course, you can also find us at Google Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Audible, Amazon Music, and other platforms that respect freedom of speech.
I thank you, Dr. Lopkin, and we'll be back next week.
We'll see you then.